Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for another installation of the Loden Sports Outlier Sessions. My name is Matt Pajak, co-founder of Loden Sports. Before we get started, a quick plug on what Loden Sports is. We are the affordable human performance data provider. We use non-exclusive, objective athletic evaluations for the purposes of benchmarking athletic development, informing athlete health, and identifying outliers. Our evaluations are non-sport, gender, skill level, or age specific. They are for anyone and everyone, just like these outlier sessions. We pride ourselves on our experience and professionalism in executing evaluations and teaching others how to routinely evaluate. But most importantly, we pride ourselves on making historically difficult to understand performance data palatable for coaches, athletes, and parents. If you're interested in learning more or getting in touch, visit our website at www.lodensports.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Loden Sports, and read our blog, which is also available through our website. I also want to throw a shout out to our friends at Yellow Box Macaroons, the first unofficial sponsor of the Loden Sports Outlier Sessions. If you're a fan of sweet treats, their hand-curated coconut macaroons are a must. Continuing on the tradition of Jackie Weiss, Yellow Box Macaroons is the most delicious box of macaroons in the world. If you don't like coconut or macaroons, that's on you. Find your next box on www.yellowboxmacaroons.com or on Instagram at yellowboxmacaroons. The Outlier Sessions have been created as a way to bridge the gap and create a connection between the aspiring and the achieving. All of our guests have a niche at the highest levels of sport and are an outlier in their own right. We want to take some time to talk about long-term athlete development with them in the context of their experiences. We want to talk about their journeys, their processes for taking care of themselves, and get to know a little bit more about their personal interests as well. Now sit back and relax and enjoy another Outlier session, unless you're driving, in which case keep both hands on the steering wheel and your eyes on the road. All right, let's get into it. Our guest for this session has been a friend for years and has his own gym in Costa, Mesa, California. I'd like to introduce our first strength coach on the show, the owner of Reidt Fitness Systems, Josh Reidt. Thanks for hopping on with us.
It is a pleasure to be here. Always good to speak with you, man.
Love it. Do you want to just start off by giving a little background on yourself, kind of where you're from, where you went to school, all that good stuff?
Yes. Originally, I'm from Seattle, Washington. And then right before 8th grade, moved to a little suburb of Sacramento called Rockland, where I went to Del Oro High School in Loomis, California, and then accepted a full baseball scholarship to the University of San Francisco, where I pitched for 2 years up there before severing my ulnar nerve in my throwing arm. So went to college up there, moved down to Costa Mesa, California, when my wife got into grad school at USC, and have never thought about this paradise since.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's just West Coast through and through.
I am West Coast through and through. We went kind of from, big crazy city when I was a kid, which I actually didn't enjoy when I was a kid, but I'm thankful for that now, because Southern California is so different. Learning how to take a bus and use public transportation to get myself to practice or the mall or to a buddy's house. Now with Uber and everything else, like you kind of take that life skill for granted. Kind of like how kids don't know how to fill out checks anymore because you can just, tap your phone to somebody else's phone and send them money and stuff. But I feel like growing up in Seattle kind of, instilled a little toughness, which made me happy. so I can instill that stuff in my kids, just so they can figure out, figure out their own way, not rely on everybody else to do everything for them. Like if they need to get somewhere, then, they have multiple ways and resources to get to what they need, instead of always having to rely on mommy and daddy for everything.
Yeah, I feel like navigation is going to be such a lost skill. I mean, it already is, but just like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Every kid just so on autopilot, where, we're all on autopilot as it is. It's like, oh, if there's somewhere that I've never been that I got to get to, it's just punch it into the GPS, It's like,
yeah.
it didn't used to be that way.
No, it didn't. Like it used to, like you literally had to like describe to somebody like, hey, the third oak tree on the left is, where you need to turn, like that used to be it. Thankfully it's not, completely that way anymore, because I'm not like the greatest with directions. So I do rely on, Siri to help me get places. But at the same time, like, it's, you got to be able to read a map and, use a compass and, just some basic life things, just to have that in your back pocket, just in case the phone's not charged and it dies on you. You gotta be able to find your way somewhere else.
So born in Seattle, came from the big rain. Now lives in the big sun. Keep it as concise.
A lot of rain, yeah.
big
big sun. Lot of rain. Was actually just up in Seattle a couple of weeks ago, working with some athletes that I have up there, and stepped off the plane in flip-flops, and there was snow on the ground still, and definitely kind of miscalculated my comfort zone. I live in board shorts and flip-flops most of the day, while I'm out here. So my travel attire is lacking. So I'm going to have to upgrade my game a little bit when I go back up there. But love the city. It's beautiful. Springtime there, early fall. There's really not a lot of better places to be, even over Southern California. Like it's 70 and pretty clear here all year long. So you kind of take it for granted sometimes, but Seattle in the summer, when you have 20 hours of sunlight and it's 80 degrees and there's no wind, and you have all the lakes and hiking and trails, and you have the big city life if you want that. Like you got a lot at your disposal. So it's a hidden gem that doesn't get the love that it deserves because it's tucked away up there. But it's beautiful up there.
Yeah, I've been up there a couple times in the summer, and to your point, like when you visit only in the summer, you wonder why people, talk badly about Seattle and the weather up there, because it's like, wow, everything's so lush, everything's so green, everything's so blue, the sun's out, it's warm, all those different things, but then it's only like that because for 10 months out of the year it's raining. So
yeah, it's kind of like you just kind of chronically have like a drippy nose while you're up there. Like it's always a little cold, it goes from always a little cold to really nice to then it's just extremely cold. And there's not a lot of happy medium with the sun and nice weather days, and then randomly it rains. Like it's always raining or looks like it's going to rain. So your bar is really low as far as what you're going to have to wear that day. It's going to be something with sleeves and probably a beanie, and it's definitely people were definitely laughing at me when I got off the plane, and then I'm going to catch an Uber, and I'm stepping through snow and little patches of ice and stuff on the ground with my nice, Nike flip-flops on. So, oh well, lesson learned.
Yeah. All right. Enough about Seattle. All right, let's start off with a handful of our signature LTAD related questions. I'm sure these are ones that you've heard before, as we do them with pretty much all our guests. But talking about emotional well-being and ignition. So our LTAD will be an inclusive, holistic, and philosophical reference guide for developing athletes of all sports and levels of aspiration. In our eyes, everyone is an athlete. So let's start with emotional well-being and the importance of gratefulness. There are little things we can do every day to bolster our emotional well-being. It's like a muscle, needs to be trained. This is something that everyone can do every day. Josh, what are 3 things you are grateful for today?
First thing I'm grateful for is that the sun's out. That I can wear flip-flops today and not step in any snow like I did in Seattle. I haven't emotionally recovered from that that hit to the psyche when I got off a plane. So the weather out here, I'm extremely grateful for that. Secondly, I'm extremely grateful for my wife and my 3 children, because they are the ones that get me out of bed every morning at 5:00 when it's dark, and I just want to hit snooze and go back to sleep. I will roll over and I will see my wife, and sometimes I will see my 2-year-old randomly tucked in the corner of the bed, and my 8 and my 6-year-old, across the hall. I do this to make sure that they have the life that they deserve. And then thirdly, I am extremely grateful that I have the relationships with my athletes that I do. Training is great, and, seeing them on TV and, whatever, I mean, that's cool, but it's more rewarding when you get to go to their weddings, and when, if they're having something, in life that's bothering them, or they're trying to navigate through, and they call you and, want to talk through it and stuff. And, knowing that, we have that trust, and it's not a work paycheck relationship, it's long lasting. That is something that on an hourly basis, almost, I have a lot of gratitude for.
Dang, Josh, crushed it. Covered a lot of ground there on 3 things.
I do that.
I'll hit you with my 3 real quick, and then we'll keep it moving. But I'm going to go with something that's very relevant to today, and hopefully maybe we can get back to these days one day sooner rather than later. But the days when gas prices weren't a concern, the majority of the time you're just not worried about gas prices. You're just driving around doing whatever you're doing, and now all of a sudden it's like you better go top off your gas tank today, because you don't know, it might spike another $1 or 2 tomorrow, and who knows if it'll ever come down. So definitely took those days for granted. Being able to go on like YouTube or Google and find ways to fix like small things in your car that would cost you an arm and a leg at a shop. So being able to take care of those little things. And then the last thing is just homemade things, being able to like make things at home. My fiance makes a wonderful like homemade sandwich bread that we use over the course of the week. It's like little things like that. It's like the bread's delicious, but then also like, there's kind of like this feeling of being like self-sustainable, I guess, or I don't know. But it's just like little like homemade like life skills,
Yeah, that's, again, life skills, right? Like being able to depend on yourself, and like the resources that you have that are, immediately in front of you. Like Amazon's cool, right? But if you're just on autopilot and you got to Amazon everything, I mean, like, are you really are you really mature? Are you really an adult? If you rely on, if you rely on Jeff Bezos to have products show up to your door on a daily basis, like we all use it, but it's pretty cool to make something, whether it's food or something with some wood and a saw, or like that's awesome, instead of having to go shop for it and support somebody else, instead of stimulating your own mind and doing it, figuring out a way to make it happen on your own.
Yeah, I mean, there was an athlete that we recently recorded a podcast with, Chase Watkins, and like one of the things we talked about towards the end was just like making something in reality, and he literally, I was like, what do you mean by that? Like creating in the real world. And he's just like, I went and planted some trees in my parents' backyard that are going to bear fruit in a couple of years, and like that type of thing. It's just like really cool to be able to plant a tree, nourish it, and then watch it grow up and turn into something. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, to your point on like food, it's like, oh, you want Mexican tonight? Yeah, let me Uber Eats it. Like, no, dude, go to the grocery store, like get the ingredients and figure out how to make homemade Mexican,
Yeah. Thankfully, I don't cook at all. Like I will barbecue, but like I'm not a big. I mean, I would like to be. I just currently am not very good at cooking. My wife is fantastic, and like everything's really healthy. She'll go to two different farmers markets for certain things. Like she's got a routine and a rhythm down, but then figures out, like which recipe she wants to tweak, or, if, the kids want to try something different, how to make a play on, something that might not be super healthy, that, we can sub, avocado mayo for instead of, Miracle Whip or something like that, like with it. So I'm fortunate that I have her, but, her resourcefulness, is something that I kind of envy. If I was home more, I feel like I'd be better at it, but, I'm not. Like, I'm resourceful in the gym, but, resourceful cooking for my children. I'm like, dude, like, here's a piece of meat. Like, I'm going to go throw it on the grill because I don't have to do much to it. It's easy to do that. And then I watch Top Chef and I'm like, I want to make that. And then I wouldn't even know where to start.
That's the problem with America, is that there's so many options for everything. So like there's only 24 hours in the day. If you want to be you could be a great chef. You could be, you can fix your own car up. You can do this, that, whatever, but you can't be an expert in everything because there just isn't enough time. So
no. And I'm sure that we'll touch on that later on in this podcast.
All right,
let's with the gym.
Let's roll into ignition. This is always a fun one, but it's a key pillar to athlete development in our eyes. It's what lights the fire for the developing athlete to want to participate in sports. I think you're probably going to have an interesting look at this because, obviously you played and now you're kind of in the position to help light that fire. But who or what in your life helped drive the interest in baseball when you were younger, and then training the overhead rotational athletes when your playing days ended? Kind of talk about the people involved, or maybe there was a moment that triggered it, kind of how it happened.
So as a kid, I played baseball, basketball, football. And then, like I did some boxing. So like I did some Golden Gloves boxing and stuff up in Seattle. So I was I was extremely active. From, my goodness, age 5, 6, as far back as I can remember, I was always playing multiple sports all year round. And I don't know if part of that was, just my my parents, were hoping that, I would be some future stud, or if it was, I needed some discipline. And, I kind of look at it like it's a little bit of both, maybe. But, playing multiple sports, for so long, like there's like anything, like there's certain things where, like you get a little burnt out, with some of it and stuff. So, I got to high school, and, when I moved down to California, played baseball, basketball, football my freshman year, and then football went year round. The lifting, the 7-on-7s, the, spring practices and stuff. And so I also just kind of figured, I'm, a 6-foot kid, playing center on my basketball team. Like my college offers are probably not going to be there. Whereas I played quarterback, all the 3 years that I played, in high school. I didn't play my senior year, because I was trying to protect my, scholarship and draft status in baseball. So just kind of the natural evolution of, where I was projected to go and to be in the sport of baseball kind of, led me to put more effort and energy into baseball. Originally, like I always had dreams that I would be playing quarterback in the NFL. That was a big goal of mine. And then, when I was in 7th grade, I started talking to some colleges actually, about football, and going to some of their camps and whatnot. Seattle down to Northern California. And then, it just kind of, my passion for basketball just kind of went away a little bit. And I wanted to focus more on football and baseball. And then honestly, man, like I was told by so many people, like, hey, your future's in baseball, your future's in baseball. I threw hard for, now, like when you're upper 80s, low 90s, in, the year 2000, I graduated high school in 2001. People are, that was like throwing 100 now. Like there wasn't a lot of guys that were in the 90s then. So I was, 90, 92, touched 5 and 6 a few times and stuff. And, a couple of, showcases, which also weren't really a big deal back then. And then it got me a lot of attention. So I quit football because I was getting so much attention, and was fortunate enough to have some opportunities in baseball my senior year, that I wanted to focus on. And so I got a pitching coach and started working out with the Sacramento Kings strength and conditioning coaches, at a gym, pretty close to where I lived. And then just put all of my efforts into that. And then went to college, and then I got hurt. And then what made me want to do what I'm doing now, which on the strength conditioning side and the mentorship of athletes, is I got hurt and I was supposed to redshirt my entire sophomore year. And I was basically given the ultimatum that if I didn't pitch, then my scholarship was going to get taken because I had a 98% scholarship. So they told me, you're going to pitch or we're going to take your scholarship and we're going to go get, 2 or 3 other guys that can fill your spot, with your money. And so I rushed the rehab and I rushed the throwing, and I was just never right. And the fact that I had that, that pressure, to sacrifice, my health and my longevity for, the short-term, potential that I could, help the team, for those coaches, is something that I think about daily. Every time I talk to any of the athletes that are in here, and then, they want to talk to me about colleges, and they talk to me about the recruiting process, and they talk to me about, their travel coaches and all this stuff. And, some of the stuff I agree with, and some of the stuff, like, quite frankly, I piss a lot of people off with, because I care about the kid and I care about his window to play this game at a high level. I don't care about the plastic ring that they're going to win, in a travel tournament, so a coach can use that to market, the program to the next crop of kids. I'm not into that. Like, the athlete comes first. And that is something that, I wish my well-being would have came first, instead of the well-being of the coaching staff that, gave me this ultimatum when I was in college. And I will never waver. I'll never waver on my priority of being open and honest and direct with the athlete, so he can make the best informed decision he feels that he needs for himself. So that my roundabout answer to consolidate this is essentially, I got hurt. I was forced to play. And, I don't ever want to see that happen to anybody that steps through these doors. I don't want them feeling that they're in that position.
Yeah, I think that speaks to a lot of why you're on this podcast, and, why our relationship is the way it is over the past couple of years, because I think there's a lot of synergy between the way you view things and how I view things, which is just, the athlete comes first. And for a lot of people, that isn't always the case. And I think you're kind of the example of that. So, I mean, kudos to you, especially in a place like Southern California where they play 12 months out of the year, at least fighting the good fight, even though you're fighting against, an entire societal belief pretty much that, playing is more important than athlete health sometimes. So, interesting. All right. Last LTAD question, and then we'll get into some other things here. Let's just give a quick shout out to one of our foundational elements, which is sleep. In your opinion, how important is sleep, and has your view on sleep changed over the years?
As I've gotten older, speaking for myself, as I've gotten older, I feel like sleep has become way more important credit I gave it for when I was in my 20s. Like, in my teens, I slept a lot, right? You're going through puberty and you're growing, and you hear parents always say, "Oh, well, he slept till noon." Well, I mean, his body needed to sleep, until noon sometimes. That luxury when you're an adult, like, you don't get 12 hours of sleep. So you have to prioritize your day around your training and your work and, your family and stuff, and make sure that you leave a good, 7.5 hour window is kind of what I shoot for. So I attempt to kind of wind down, around 9:30. And if I'm asleep by 10 and up at 5, like, I'm good. If I fall asleep a little earlier, and I get an extra 20-30 minutes, I'm happy. But I try to live in that sweet spot of the 7.5 hour range. For most athletes, I try to tell them they need 7.5 to 9 hours. So that way they're completing a full sleep cycle, and they're not waking up in the middle of a cycle and they're groggy, and, they're, create some hormonal imbalances and stuff if you don't complete a full sleep cycle. But we preach here in the gym, 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep a night And there's times where kids will come in and I can see that they were up late, doing homework, or maybe they had, some of the private schools out here, they practice from, 6 to 9 o'clock at night. And, the first session in the gym is at 6 a.m. And so for some kids, like that's the easiest way and the most convenient time for them to be able to come in. So I know that they're not getting that 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep. And they're kind of dragging, and I can see it in the first, 5 minutes of talking to them and seeing them. I'll send them back home and tell them, just go to sleep. Like, I don't need you to check a box that you showed up today to work out. Like, I need you to give me a good, honest effort and be able to attack the movements, and then be able to, fail at things, and then, neurologically be able to rewire you to be better at that thing that you failed at within the next workout. You can't do that when you're sleep deprived. It just doesn't, it never turns out well. So, some people, I've had people disagree with me and say, oh, well, like you shouldn't have kids up at 6 a.m. to come work out. And, what's the alternative? Then they work out at 8 o'clock at night, after they've gone to school all day. They've, probably had to do some kind of lifting or conditioning at school. Then they have a practice or they have a game, they're going to be tired no matter what. I'd rather them start the day so they're more productive in the early middle parts of the day, and can get to bed earlier than vice versa, where they sleep an hour later, but really, they're still having to accomplish the same amount of workload throughout that day. Like they're not getting more sleep. They're not getting a better quality of sleep. They can eat throughout the day to help the recovery process. They can hydrate throughout the day to help the recovery process if they work out in the morning. Like, I don't do a 6 a.m. workout because I think we're tougher because we're up earlier. Like, I don't care about that. Like, it's the most appropriate and convenient time of the day for a lot of kids. There's 40 guys in here in the mornings, working out before they go to school. Because
it's what we talked about before. It's just, there's only 24 hours in the day. There's only so much you can do with that. And I think that's part of the reason why sleep, and there's so much science out there on sleep at this point. Like, you can go find it anywhere, and it's all pretty consistent just in terms of like the importance of sleep, on not just for brain health, but, the functioning of the body and, all kinds of different things. And I think that tends to go by the wayside when you prioritize everything else but. So, sleep, important. Glad you're telling those guys, 7.5 to 9, and stay on them about it. Cause obviously I think where you're at is, probably as, when it comes to training for whatever sport, in this case, baseball, there's so many different people pulling them in so many different directions. And, a lot of their time over the course of 24 hours is probably chewed up sitting in a car, sitting in traffic. So,
there's a lot of transition time, we'll call it, where they're trying to do 30 minutes of homework in the car, on the way to come see me or to go to their hitting lesson, or, if they have a high school game, in the winter time, there's fall leagues and winter leagues and stuff out here. These kids have to be creative, to be able to take the care of themselves if they need to. So the naps and the sleep are ridiculously important, for these kids. So, I have no intent of taking my foot off the gas on the importance of how all that stuff is for them.
Yeah. Let's kind of transition, to talk about exactly what you do. I think it's important to bring to light kind of the importance of sports specific training, and we're going to get into that here. But let's, start, you oversee the strength programming for Huntington Beach High School, Mater Dei in Santa Ana, JSerra Catholic in San Juan Capistrano, three historic high school programs in Southern California that continue to move handfuls of players to Division I and professional baseball year over year. In the off season, you're also dealing with pro guys. Talk about how you approach training high school athletes versus the pro guys, and kind of what are the challenges you deal with in each group, and then kind of what do you enjoy most?
So the most blanket answer I can give for that is like treat every athlete the same. Everybody has the same prerequisites of movements in baseball. Hitting, pitching, like everything is rotational. Everything is overhead rotational. Everything starts from the ground up, regardless of position, regardless of, an athlete's ability. They all need to be trained with the same formula. Now, there's a lot of variables of, potential injury risk, injuries that a guy's coming off of, and this and that, and those variables need to be accounted for as well. But from a philosophical standpoint, everybody here is training full body, three-dimensionally on a daily basis. With high school kids, there's, it becomes more of I hate saying like therapy session, but I'm doing more like managing emotions and, showing them that it's okay to come in the gym and fail and not be good at something. Guys come in here and, I don't care if they are a potential first round draft pick or if they're just trying to make the feeder team in 8th grade to get into the high school, doesn't matter to me. Like everybody has a goal. Everybody is coming from some kind of background. Some guys are coming from other facilities, and they're looking to have a different approach and change some things up. Or some guys have never trained before, and there's no right or wrong reason for walking through the door. But when you walk through the door, like you're going to fail. And for a high school kid, that's hard for them to understand. And basically the way that I explain it to the kid and to their families, frankly, is if they come in here and the workouts are easy, then they're in the wrong place. This is not the facility for you. Like I don't need another jersey on the wall. I'm not looking to be a gajillionaire. Like this isn't a money grab. Like it is a specific training system for a person who is specifically wired to be able to adapt to that training system. So failure comes with anything new. I've failed a lot, building this business. I look back sometimes and go, oh my God, like, I'm sorry that I made you do these scat push-ups in this certain way. And, we all learn and we all grow and we all become better for it. But initially, you have to get past your own ego, to be able to be vulnerable enough to come to a place where you can fail in a safe environment. And we're going to talk about why you failed. And we're going to talk about the progressions that are going to get you to where you need to go. And chances are, even when you're on the right progression to make that thing that you failed with, a non-liability for you, whether it's in the weight room or on the field, you're going to fail again. And you need to be okay with that. And you need to be able to take that as a challenge and not compare yourself with the guy next to you who maybe is really good at the thing that you're failing at, because the next day there's going to be a work in the workout. There's going to be something that you're really good at that he's failing, and he's going to be experiencing the same emotions that you were feeling the other day when you were watching him do something that, you were failing at. So I feel like, a therapist a lot, and managing psyches. With pro guys, it's a lot different. Pro guys kind of have a good, they have a good idea of body awareness, and, they know the things that they're good at. They know the things that they need to improve on. It's their job at that point. Right. And so it's more of a workman's mentality where, they're clocking in, and they know that they're going to get some stuff thrown their way, and they're going to chip away at it. And, they ask their questions when they're confused on something, but they don't feel like they're not like overwhelmed with information, and they're not overwhelmed with, the failure side of certain movements, because they understand that if you fail 3 out of 10 times in baseball, and you're Albert Pujols, you're going to the Hall of Fame, right? Like, you're okay with that. High school kids are still, they're trying to climb all these rungs of this ladder that, they feel like, is so unattainable, and they're living and dying, on a daily basis, and they can't manage those emotions and say, hey, like, I got my cheeks clapped today in this workout, like, back at it tomorrow, like they don't have that. They're like, oh man, like, I'm not very good at this. And then the next time one of those movements comes up in their workout, like they try to skip around it, or they shy away from it. And you have to provide that environment where it's okay to fail. I'm not judging you. The guys in here aren't judging you. Nobody is judging you, because there is something in every single workout that guys are going to fail on, no matter how good of an athlete they are, or where they got drafted, or how much money they're getting paid this year to play on TV. Like, it's irrelevant. So everybody in here is on an equal and level playing field. Everybody. It becomes more about psychological management than it does about different training protocols for different types of athletes, because everybody in here, again, needs to be able to move athletically, 3-dimensionally, in their own space, before we start fine-tuning the specifics of of each position, or if a guy needs to add weight or lose weight or whatever, great. We're gonna help them accomplish that. But the foundational principle is they need to be able to move 3-dimensionally, athletically, in space.
Sure. I kind of want to cross over into another area here. That's a separate group of athletes that you work with that are also high school athletes, which also happen to be really high profile high school athletes. So probably a pretty difficult group of athletes to work with. The Evoshield Canes national team. You work with them during the summer. This is a role you have to approach entirely different, because the high schools that you work with can come into your gym. You see those kids every day. You can go see them at school. The Evoshield Canes, those guys are all over the map. How do you get the most out of a guy with remote training, and how do they get the most out of your program when they're not coming in and seeing you in your gym?
So we'll start it with this. I have always been a guy that, like, I despise travel ball. I hate it. I hate that kids are on the road. If summer's 90 days, a kid should be at home, 60 of those days, right? Maybe a little bit more. And unfortunately, it's the reverse. So high profile or not high profile, these guys are on planes, they're on buses, it's a very minor league, kind of grind. during the summer for these guys. And it's not just like a specific travel team, like we play 3 tournaments a summer. So for a total of maybe, we'll call it 20 days that we're together during the summer, but then you throw in, you have PDP, which is somewhere between, 1 year it was, almost a whole month, and that's a month that they're away from their privatized coaches, their families, their friends, their safety blanket, their food, their, the stuff that makes them who they are as an athlete. Then you have, you have area codes, and you have some of these other, higher profile select events, which again, there's nothing wrong. Like area codes is an amazing event. I'm just simply saying that it's another week for, a kid from New Jersey to hop on a plane and be somewhere that he's unfamiliar with and have to navigate that. And every year I see guys that, they come into the summer and they're 94 and 95 and they're supposed to be a top 20 pick. And then you watch them throw out area codes and they're 88, 90, and they're like laboring through the inning, and all because they couldn't say no to something, or because they didn't have the resource that, I'm able to provide for our Canes national team, where I'm training them on the road. And, if you're a pitcher, right, we carry 18 pitchers with us. So nobody's going to throw a complete game. Every tournament we go to, I cringe because some kid from, some other team somewhere is, he throws 105 pitches against us. And then, you see him a day or two later and he's playing center field, or he's playing shortstop, or one kid was catching one time, and that is exactly what I don't want to have happen to any of the athletes that come in here. I don't want that. It's completely unacceptable to me that's even a thought process for a coach, that he thinks it's a good idea. You get these kids and they've thrown, 60 to, in some cases 90 innings for their high school team during the springtime, depending on how deep. I know in like North Carolina, they have state playoff system and stuff out there. So sometimes, we've had kids from the state of North Carolina that, couldn't be at the first tournament or two because they were still in playoff. Which, for me is kind of nuts, because we end our season out here is kind of like, the last third of May. So, there's a little 2-3 week, gap, before they go into summer ball. The downside to that is that they play all year round. So guys aren't very good about taking breaks. So the weather out on the East Coast forces guys to take breaks, which I think is great. But I wish would happen more in other states to kind of force, maybe we can play baseball 8 months out of the year, and then, we can take 4 months of non-organized, participation. Would be nice to give some guys a break and force that and stuff. But, the kids from Canes, they come from all over the place. And so there's a handful of kids every year that, are from the West Coast or from California. And, specifically, 2 years ago, I think I had like 7, 8 guys, maybe. I think it was 8 guys that, I trained here in the facility, on a regular basis. They were on the team. So that made that year, pretty easy. But that was kind of an anomaly. So, the guys around the country, I have a handful of them that, I send workouts remotely on an app that I had developed. So I can film everything and then type everything up and, the cues and everything scripted for them to do. And it just goes right to their phone. Every couple of weeks they get a new program. So that's been great. But for the guys that like I've never met, a lot of them are coming from smaller towns or, smaller states where it's, there's not a lot of resources. And they've never had, they kind of just do what the high school program says, which, most high school programs are the football coach or the football lifting guy is having the baseball players, follow a very football based, Olympic type program. There's very minimal, arm care and mobility, work, happening. There's probably no tissue work, going on, and probably not a lot of talk about nutrition and sleep and hydration. So being able to go to practice every day, we practice every morning before our games. We take BP. I spend, the first hour with all of the pitchers. We go through a team stretch and then I take the pitchers, and then based on the rotation that we have laid out, we go through a throwing program. We go through pre-throw arm care. We go through post-throw arm care. And if, a guy needs to, if he's going to throw an inning and then we're going to have him, come back 3 or 4 days later to throw 2 or 3, in the first round of the playoffs or whatever, I make sure that they have two workouts that are structured for them. Whether it be, we can do, some stuff on the field or, thankfully we stay at the same kind of circle of hotels in every state that we go to for the tournaments. So, I know that they have, they have a very quality, gym set up. So I'm able to give the guys their workouts to do there. So we send them home more educated and better physically than they came. And that's, there's some guys that, that do go to places and they do, they do train at, other baseball facilities, or just with a trainer. And I make sure that, I'm very, very, politically correct when I'm not like, if I'm teaching them something new, it's not me trying to tell them or steer them that like their guy is not doing it right, or he should have known this, or that's not what it's about. Like, it's like, these are the beliefs that I have. These are the things that, I have seen success over the years with. And, I just want them to be able to have access to it and then be able to implement it as they see fit when I'm not around. But when I'm around, there is a structure, and we're going to do the things that I need us to be doing. So that way I know that I've done my job. So yeah, long answer there. Very long answer, I know, but essentially it's, I wanted to, instead of complaining about, guys coming home, after being gone for, there's a travel program out here that I'll leave nameless. They were on the road 38 days in a row last year, like in a row. They were just going from college to college doing stuff. And, the track record, there's a lot of kids that come in here that have a lot of different residual effects after doing something like that. A lot of arm problems, a lot of guys that are down 10, 12 pounds, low back issues. I mean, it's not, kids in high school aren't ready for that yet. They're not ready for 38 days in a row on the road. I mean, I don't know any adults that are ready for that. To be honest with you, I mean, 10 days in Atlanta, and I mean, like, I feel like I was gone for a month. No offense to the city of Atlanta, but I mean, you just get off of your routine, and your environment's different, your sleep's different, and these are all things that aren't accounted for. Everyone's just thinking about winning baseball games, but the little intangibles that you need to be taking care of off the field are the things that are going to allow you to perform well on the field. So, yeah, long-winded answer there, but
dynamics to your job and what you do depending on the athlete that you work with. It's something that a lot of people don't really think about. If people that know you on Twitter, they're not thinking about how your approaches have to change depending on whether you're working with the local high school kids who you work with 12 months out of the year on site, or the high school kids you work with just in the summer on the road, and then remote programming, and then the pro guys that just come in the off season. There's a lot of different things going on in your world, and definitely about to throw another thing in here for you to talk about, because I think you have a really unique look and a very broad look at the entire amateur baseball space. So let's kind of hop in on this one. For the parents and athletes out there that don't know, and that is probably the majority of them, talk about the difference between a generic strength and conditioning program and then kind of what you program for your athletes. I think a lot of people would be quick to say, well, my kid, or I'm getting stronger by doing this, which may be true, but kind of talk about, how you train the overhead rotational athlete and why that's different.
So, I mean, as I touched on a little bit in the previous question, has kind of evolved from this like football based mentality. When I was in high school, I mean, I did every football lift there was, bench, bench, squat, clean, hang clean, deadlift. We were doing military press, clean and jerks, like all of this stuff, because the philosophy is you got to be bigger, faster, stronger. Or in the mid 2000s, it was mass equals gas, right? And that's, I mean, I would like to think that we've evolved enough, and social media has maybe helped us enough, that we can realize that mass does not equal gas. Tim Lincecum, probably weighed as much as I did, when I was in, my sophomore year of high school, and I mean, that dude was throwing, he's 96, 98 miles an hour, for a good 6-7 year period, whatever. And he did it with, being able to pull ground force and load rotationally, to be able to unload linearly, and to be able to have, mechanics that allowed a smooth power transfer from the ground all the way out through the fingertips, creating extension, and, that had nothing to do with how much he could deadlift and how much he could squat, or none of that stuff mattered. And I think, philosophically, we've gotten to this point where, things that look cool on social media, people think like that's the way that we're supposed to train because it looks hard, or it looks like this guy's deadlifting 500 pounds. So, he must throw 100 miles an hour. And that stuff's not the case. I mean, for all the power that, you can produce, well, you better be able to decelerate that power, and you better be able to direct it and transfer it up the chain and decelerate it efficiently out the arm. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a zipper on your elbow or your shoulder. Baseball is a violent sport. Throwing an object, overhead, and then releasing that object overhead like you do with a baseball, I mean, it is the most traumatic thing that you can do to a body part in any sport. And you got to do that 100 times a game. If you're a big leaguer, essentially, 80 to 100 times a game, and then recover from that, and then repeat that 5 days later. Like, that's baseball players get a bad rap, like, oh, you just throw a ball. Like, all right, Mr. Football coach who thinks I should be deadlifting 500 pounds, like, go throw 100 pitches and let me know how your arm feels. Right? Like, go throw 100 pitches and then come in the next day, and then I want you to hit some heavy bench press and let me know how that feels. And then let me know how you feel, 2 days out after that, when, your rotator cuff is on fire, and you probably have some flexor soreness, and, like, you're not the best version of yourself going into that workout, which is why, I have, adopted the philosophy of, every workout in here is full body. We don't do upper lower splits. Like, there's days where your legs are going to be more sore than normal. Right. But that's not because we did 7 different, lower half movements. We will deadlift, and, sometimes we'll deadlift and we'll squat in the same workout. That happens. So naturally you're going to be a little fatigued and a little tired, after that, but the intent is not to take your legs away from you for, the next 2 or 3 days, and crush you. Like, you need your legs every single day when you throw, right? Like, your first and last point of contact with the ground is your feet, right? You need everything above the feet to be working efficiently for your arm to do what it needs to do efficiently, right? So that is a direct correlation to what you're doing in the gym. So, the whole Olympic lifting style of stuff, I mean, it just doesn't offer a lot of, bang for the buck when it comes to baseball. It's power in the wrong plane of motion, which, is unutilized power, for a rotational athlete, when everything that you're doing is just in the sagittal plane. That doesn't hold water for me. So, because I think that way, and because, people see me, posting, everybody's barefoot in the gym, right? And, guys are bear crawling, and, like, I intentionally don't post videos on social media of guys lifting. I intentionally don't do it. Like, posting a guy, deadlifting a ton of weight, or, hip thrusting, 700 pounds, or, like, cool. I mean, again, like, that's good for likes, right? But, like, a kid in Wisconsin who is following me and, is struggling with his thoracic mobility, right? I'm not doing him any service whatsoever by posting something that, he could figure out himself, that, hey, hip thrusting is good for you. Like, let's, here's a guy hip thrusting. He doesn't need to see me that. He needs to see, a T-spine matrix that covers all 3 planes of motion, that is going to help him, minimize that weakness that he has. So hopefully someday if he keeps chipping away at it, can become a strength, and he's better for it. So, the perception is, like, all we do is mobility, and, we don't ever lift. And quite frankly, and I think you could back me up on this, every year, the strongest guys tested back when you were at USA Baseball and now that you're with Loden are coming out of this gym. You have Nick Prado, you have Corbin Carroll, you have Matt McClain, you have Nick Dumasol. Like, I mean, I just,
yeah, Cody Schreier,
Cody Schreier. I mean, like, I pride myself in the fact that these guys, not just their athleticism, but the fact that they are healthy. They're healthy and they don't lose this athleticism. They're continuing to evolve, which in turn tells me that I'm continuing to evolve and I'm not getting complacent and I'm not stagnant and I'm not just, I read this in a book once, so this has to be the truth. Like I definitely pride myself on continuing to try to push the envelope on, on human movement.
I mean, I think one thing that all those guys have in common that you mentioned was not only, were they strong, not only were they good movers, obviously some of them more athletic than others, but all with a certain degree of athleticism that played on the baseball field in its own special way. But like their ability to sustain their performance, which is that's the ultimate goal of, if you're going to get to pro ball, if you're going to play college baseball, it's like, it's great if you can do it for a month. But if you're not able to have the right things in place from, recovery and lifting and, we talked about sleep and nutrition and all these different routines. If you don't have all of that in place, and I think your part of it is huge, especially for those high school guys out there getting ready for the next level, building those routines, is that those guys weren't, crawling or sucking wind by August. And you see that everywhere with the kids that go through the meat grinder. That is the, junior high school showcase summer. You go through the showcase circuit, end of the summer, like a lot of those kids just need a pillow, and
yeah,
a lot of the Cody Schreiers of the world and the Nick Prados of the world, like they were just as good in August as they were in June, as they were in March and in February when their high school season was getting going.
Yes. And that's, from afar, the behind the scenes look that, I'm, that validates the training program. There are guys that I have seen that, have been here for, 2, 3, 4 years. And then whether it's pro ball or whether, they go to college, within the first, 6, 8 weeks, like they're on the shelf, like they're hurt. And I mean, I hate seeing it. It's hard for me. That's a hard pill for me to swallow when, like when you see a kid and they've done something for so long, right. And they've been able to, and again, I'm going to preface this with like, I am a very small piece of this pie, right? These kids are, what Nick Prado has accomplished and is going to continue to accomplish is Nick Prado, right? Like I've been behind the scenes and, helped and stuff, but like he's got to hit the ball. He's got to throw the ball. He's got to walk through the door and show up and do the work. And to his credit, he does it all, and he does it all relentlessly, right? But there are kids that, like they, for whatever reason, they switch things up. And then, you watch it's almost like a slow train wreck, right? You see, like early in the season, they're not moving well. And, they got to skip a start because the shoulder's not right, and then it manifests into something bigger. And then they're out for a year, or, they had a surgery, or, they get cut from the program and stuff. And that's the pitfall to this job, right? You have the really big highs and then you have the really low lows, when really, like, I just want everybody to live in the middle. Like even if you're not in here training, right? I've had guys that, move away or think that they're like, hey, well, I'm going to go train with this guy now or go do this. I have to sit back and like let it take its course, and like just hope, like I'm hoping it's not, anything that is so detrimental that they can't come back from, but like it's a tough one to swallow, where that, they did something and worked so hard to become the athlete that they are, that, a team wanted to pay them, to come play for them, or, they accepted a scholarship to a certain school, because of, they had they hit a certain way, they pitched a certain way, they trained a certain way. And the culmination of that, gave them this opportunity. And then all of those tools, for whatever reason, get stripped away. And then, the athlete isn't performing at that level anymore. That's a hard one. That's a hard one for me to swallow. So, and I don't necessarily know what that answer is, but trying to educate these kids, and frankly, some of the college and pro teams and stuff that I work closely with, like, there's a huge open line of communication where, they need to see a kid, they need to see an athlete, they have to check certain boxes, for, to, as they report to, somebody higher up. Right. Like, but they don't necessarily care if it's, if a guy needs to have a higher power output day, they're not dead set that, like, they have to deadlift and they have to squat and they have to, like, they're leaving it up to the athlete to choose. They're giving them a box of movements and saying, hey, choose X, Y, choose X, Y, or Z. But either way, I'm able to say, hey, like he pushed some weight today or whatever. But it gives the athlete a little bit of ownership, and, based on how he's feeling that day, if he's a little tight in the low back, then maybe he hip thrusts, instead of deadlift, like there's nothing wrong with that. But those conversations are very few and far between. So the kid is kind of stuck choosing between, what he's always done and then what his new coach or team or program or whatever, like, wants him to do. It's a tough spot for a kid. So, we try in here to do our best to, to bridge that gap and, have good relationships with teams and with coaches and stuff. So, the kid kind of gets the best of all of us so he can ultimately be the best version of himself.
And that makes a ton of sense. I will say this, I think we're going on about an hour and a half here. So let's, we'll probably have to do another one of these, to cover all the other things that, I had planned on talking about, but, we're going to do Josh Reidt Volume 1, Josh Reidt Volume 2. But now, before we go, I do want to talk about some personal interests. I know you're really into MMA. Does that come through at all in the way you train your athletes, and are there parallels there? I'm sure it does, but I kind of want to hear it, from you specifically.
So yeah, as we previously talked about, like, I boxed when I was a kid, and then after I got hurt, I started training Muay Thai, and did that and fought for 11 years, 12 years, and then got married, and the wife was like, I don't want our kids wondering why daddy's got a busted foot and yada yada yada. So I stopped. And then now I got back into jiu-jitsu. So I started training jiu-jitsu, 6 months ago. So I'm looking forward to starting to compete in that now. But yeah, I mean, it has helped shape how I am with the athletes. Like, I'm tired every single day, right? Like, I'm 38. I have 3 kids. I try to get my 7 hours of sleep, but, it doesn't always happen sometimes. I run this business. I travel. I try to be a good father and a good husband. And I do everything at 100%. Right. So when a kid walks in here, that's the standard. The standard is you need to be ready to work. You need to be ready to grow and to learn, right? And you need to be able to work with and teach the guys that are younger than you and next to you if you see them struggling with something, and be selfless about that. Outside of that, man, like, I just, I don't have a lot of rules. I mean, like, the culture in here has developed over the last, 6-7 years to where, like, if you are coming in here, like, you already know what you're in store for. Between the training, between, me getting on you sometimes, between, my staff getting on you sometimes, my staff is fantastic, but like they're, if I'm learning something, right, and I'm teaching it to them, I expect them to ask questions when they don't understand it. And if they're not asking me questions, then I'm assuming that they understand it. And so if I come in and see a kid not doing something, properly or intelligently, well, that's a direct correlation. There's a chain of command that, like, the kid got it from the staff, right? And then the staff got it from me. So if mom and dad are, not happy about something, well, it falls back on me. So the discipline of learning, the discipline of, showing up, the discipline of teaching, and, making the people around me better, and not just hoarding, information and, trying to make everything about me. That is something that, martial arts, has given me. Cause I wasn't always a good guy or a nice guy. And I mean, some people probably still think I'm not a good guy or a nice guy, like that you can't please everybody. Right. But, looking back, who I am at 38 versus who I was at, 25, 26, 27, 28, I wouldn't even know that person, anymore. So, the guys that come in here, like they are family, and, they will always be treated as such. And my only requirement is that, they come in, they show up, they're ready to work. And then they're also ready to help. They're ready to help the guy next to them, be the best version of themselves as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am going to hit on one last bit here, and then I will let you go get on with your day. You're a key piece of the work that we're doing with the 3 high schools out in Orange County. After our evaluations, we're always asked by parents and players, like, how do we get better at this stuff? We've evaluated the entire programs at JSerra, Mater Dei. We're on a regular schedule with Huntington Beach. Obviously, I'm hoping to get deeper into the weeds on this in a future podcast. So maybe more on a high level, just the Loden Sports information. How do you use that information? How does it help you for the guys who regularly come in?
So there are things that, I program that, I think are, across the board good movements, and will help, will help a kid with X, Y, or Z. There's a lot of stuff gets missed by the naked eye. There are times where, I look at my programming and go, like, that could have been better. I'm missing, I feel like maybe I missed this component, or whatever the case may be. And so when you guys come out and you guys test every 3 months, you guys, and seeing the results that the kids are getting, that holds me and my programming more accountable. That means I need to sit there and look at, if I'm writing a new progression that's going to last 3 weeks, I need to look back at the previous 6 weeks and see, how much, lateral bounding we're doing, for a certain kid that maybe didn't score well on, on a single leg jump, or, how much hip mobility work, we're doing for a kid that, doesn't have a very good broad jump. It's, when you guys come, it's instant feedback for me because I can see those results, within a couple hours of you guys doing the tests. So I take that stuff to heart, instead of just going, oh, well, the kid just doesn't move very well, or, he's kind of soft. Like, no, like, that's not the answer. The answer, it starts with the program. Like, I need to be able to give them and provide them the best roadmap for their abilities to then be able to transfer that over to the test and then ultimately to the field, not pass the blame onto the kid and be like, well, it's his fault. Like, no, so I have to, like, it holds me accountable, which for me, like, I know the way that we train in here, like, I'm training these kids in a manner that they should test well. They're not going to test perfect, but they should test well, because it's a three-dimensional, multi-directional training style, instead of a grip it and rip it, sagittal based, Olympic style, training system. So it reinforces the good programs, right? And then when I look and, again, if I see a kid and his power score went down 2 points, then it also, I need to talk to that kid and make sure, like, he's eating and he's sleeping and he's hydrating and doing those behind the scenes things. But, and if he tells me he is, then I'm going to believe him and take his word for it. Then I need to look directly in the mirror at the training that I'm giving him and say, okay, like, what am I missing here that, maybe we had, a couple progressions ago, that I can give him, so that way we can get this back up and maybe, maybe improve it.
Yeah, I think that's what having consistent touch points every 3 months, it really allows you to, dial in on specific guys. And, like, if someone starts going a little bit off the tracks, like, maybe that's something that they're doing in their sport specific training, or maybe it's, a conversation you can have with them about their routines in regards to, they're not sleeping enough, or, they're not eating the way they should be eating, or over the course of the summer, something that we saw from June to September is, like, the guys who played more in the summer were the guys who saw a little bit of a pullback on, their Loden Sports athletic evaluation. So,
right.
There's so many different variables in it. The training's just one part of it. I think something that we've always seen with the guys that you train regularly is those guys typically hold up regardless of the time of year. But, I think, from your standpoint as a strength coach, being able to see that information, it's got to be invaluable to be able to, look at that every 3 months and kind of be like, all right, well, these guys are doing great, more of whatever they're doing. And, these guys over here, let's have a conversation with them. I mean, at the end of the day, like, the data doesn't drive the training per se. It's really just opens up the door for a conversation.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, that's what it's got to be. It's got to be a conversation, and it's got to be, you provide something that, I can't do for these guys on a regular basis and stuff. So, it's like-minded minds that are, taking care of a certain slice of the pie for the athlete so they can be the best version of themselves. And there's just not enough of that going on. Not enough. That's my guy and my way of doing it's the right way and the only way, and yada, 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 and the kid is the one who suffers in the end. So, I'm extremely thankful for you and for Sean and our relationship. And, even if we weren't like-minded, in the sense of our training philosophies, which thankfully we are, like, you guys are all about the athlete and the athlete first. And that, again, is rare. People say that they are, but they're not really. It's about them and how they can benefit off of them, and how, how somehow a travel ball coach having a kid pitch for him, when he's not doing the lessons, he's not doing the strength and conditioning, like he's providing a jersey and a field and a lineup for this kid to play in, and they say, that's my guy. Like that stuff is just tired, and it's old, and it's weak, and it needs to change. So I'm glad that you're not a part of that epidemic.
Yeah, you got to look at the athlete. They're like a ship. All right, go metaphorical here on the way out. They're like a ship, and there's a lot of people that are claimed to be part of the ship, if that makes sense. But really, the job of coaches and trainers and everyone around the ship isn't to be part of the ship, but to be the tide that raises the ship. So I think, we both fit into that same bucket of we are the water, and we're working as hard as we can to push that boat up off the bottom of the floor and get that thing moving.
I don't think that I could have said that any better. So thank you for articulating something that I never would have been able to articulate.
Gotta throw the creative juices in there, especially at the end,
Yeah, buddy.
Well, literary genius over here. All right, Josh, always a treat. Thanks for taking the time coming on. I'm sure we'll have you back on soon, like we've said multiple times. Looking to set something up with Benji. So if we can get you and Benji both on there, I think that'd be pretty awesome. But yeah, thanks.
Volume 2, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, for those listening in that want to learn more about what Josh does, give him a follow on Twitter and or Instagram at Reidt Fitness. That's REIDT Fitness, no spaces, all lowercase. He's always posting exercise demonstrations for your edification and to get you involved at home. We'll post the links in the description. If you see Leonidas from 300, you're in the right place. For those of you who are serious about taking your sport-specific training to the next level, he has an iOS app for remote training. Search Reidt Fitness Systems in the App Store and start getting after it from anywhere. That will do it for this episode of the Loden Sports Outlier Sessions. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to continuing to bring you the brightest and most engaging guests from within the Loden Sports Network. To stay on top of what or who is coming next, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Loden Sports. Whether you enjoyed this episode on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, please like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time.